Welcome to the third iteration of the Relay Artists Report. My name is Milton Lim, and I am part of the digital storytelling team at The Cultch. In episode 2 of the Relay, entitled Days of Molly, we saw Ty Amy Grauman and Connor Moore's vlog introduction of a brand new character, Betty Jackfish, a Shania Twain cover star from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. After Betty brought us along her journey of art parties, karaoke, interruptive advertisements, and pregnancy, episode 2 ended with the same knock at the door from episode 1. Our Week 3 artists have been working hard to bring these two disparate worlds closer into dialogue. Speaking of which, our next two artists for the relay are Jamie King and Gilles Poulin-Denis. Jamie is a theater director, dramaturg, and administrator. Since 2009, Jamie has been an employee of The Cultch in many capacities. Jamie is currently an associate artist with Electric Company Theatre and the associate artistic director for the Caravan Farm Theatre. Jamie was the recipient of the Ray Michael Prize for the Most Promising New Director at the 2017 Jesse Richardson Awards. Big Sister, which she directed and dramaturged, was the winner of the Cultivating the Fringe Award 2018, and her production of The Wolves was nominated for a Jesse Richardson Award for Best Direction and Outstanding Production in 2019. Gilles is originally from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Gilles Poulin-Denis is an actor, playwright, director, translator, and dramaturg. His latest works include Straight Jacket Winter, an auto-fictional piece co-written with Esther Duquette that toured the country from 2016 to 2019, and Ce qu'on attend de moi, a film performance created with a new audience member every night. Gilles has collaborated on numerous devised pieces, such as I Show, Après la Peur, and Gabriel Dumont's Wild West Show. Gilles is the artistic director of productions 2 Par 4 and currently lives in Vancouver. Question time. So for Jamie, you've directed quite a few of Vancouver's young actors and creators. What is an emerging trend in performance culture that you're witnessing, and how does it change or guide your directorial process?
I think there's something about how so many of us that are like under a certain age that grew up with the internet, grew up with social media, perform all the time. And there's like a kind of constant performance, and we're exposed to way more performance than I think previous generations were. So the expectations on theater have shifted just in terms of like what the audience's relationship is with the piece. Like it's a lot less about kind of the lights go down on the audience and they sit and watch something, and more about this kind of like interactivity between like what do we need that we can only get live, and kind of what does that look like. Certain things are like training people for that like surround awareness and all those elements that come with theater performance, as opposed to like the specific drive focus of like camera or social media. I'm trying to find the surround and the kind of reciprocity between the audience and the performer.
Shifting over to Gilles. As an artist who works with and across both Francophone and Anglophone communities in Canada, generally speaking, what is something holding each community back that the other does quite well?
Yeah, that's a hard question. And I think this will be very general because there's always like very specific examples in each community. And also I'd like to point out that I mostly work with the Francophone community. I don't like, I've been living in Vancouver for 10 years, and this is the first time that like an English company has reached out and asked me to participate. So thank you. But I would say, generally speaking, some of the differences is it's in the English theater is like the realism that is imposed on the theater. And there's a lot of that comes from the tradition, I think, of English theater. Of course, a lot of companies are shedding that, but there's still something that, you know, it's like the ghost of Shakespeare is always kind of like weighing down on English theater, where I feel, especially in Canada and the Francophone culture, that's not so much a thing that exists, because in the Francophone theater, an aspect of like identity, of trying to find what the Francophone identity is in Canada, which is a minority. Even in Quebec, it's like, even though it's the majority province, but there's always that aspect. And I think the downside to that I'm seeing right now is that there's a lot of the conversations about being inclusive and how to share space with other communities, even if they speak the same language. For example, that is very present, I would say, in the English theater, and maybe is a bit behind. That discussion, I find, is maybe not up to speed in certain Francophone circles, where I feel like the feeling of being a minority is is very ingrained, and sometimes it's hard to sort of share space with other minorities because we've had that feeling that we are sort of fighting or resisting for our language, but there should be space for everyone and try to get other voices.
I'd like to move our conversation over to the episode that you're creating. So can you tell me one thing about this episode? And then second to that, can you let us in on a technique that you're using?
Yeah, let's, we don't want to give anything away.
I think I can say this, that we're playing with the idea of like match cuts. So lining things up from one shot to the next and kind of how that blends and what that does to your world where things are kind of interconnected.
And as far as the episode, I think there was a lot of material and a lot of possibilities brought forward by the 2 previous episodes. If you haven't watched them already, go and watch them now. And I think for us, it was just trying to see how we could take different elements from these episodes and see how we could meld them together. And I think I'm not giving away too much.
No. And I also think like a fun point of where we are in the process, because we're coming in like just kind of the beginning of midway, is we get to scratch on a bunch of ideas that then we can leave. And the next groups have the opportunity to either, scratch that itch or move on and do something else. We're opening some doors or kind of showing that there are doors and then finding that opportunity to show potential.
As spectators of the first 2 episodes, was there something that caused you to have an itch in just watching the first 2 episodes? Was there like a moment that you're like, ooh, that's going to be something I want to touch on?
I feel like the knock has to be mentioned, but it does kind of, because it is this like hook that we've had now for 2 episodes, and something that was like, if you listen with headphones, the scariest thing that's happened to me in the last week. But I think there is something about having that like really strong hook and then the desire to see what is on the other side of the door.
Yeah, definitely the knock is a big thing. And I think for me it was the mystery, or sort of like the intrigue that comes with that knock in certain parts of episode 1, where we don't really know exactly what's going on. We're trying to figure it out. And then episode 2 to see how that storyline, which is very, very clear, to see how that is influenced or influences what was proposed in episode 1, and see how we could play around with those things.
I'd like to wrap up this artist report. Thank you both so much for your time. As for everyone else watching, we'll see you next Thursday for episode 3 of The Relay. Thank you.